Hi, welcome to the Microsoft Corporate BI and SAP BI Integration Microsoft Virtual Academy session. We are excited to be here, and my name is Sanjay Soni, and here we go. So my name is Sanjay Soni. I'm Senior Technical Product Manager in the SQL BI Marketing Group, and my passion is Microsoft BI for 15 plus years. And last 9 years, I spent within Microsoft IT delivering self-service BI to 40,000 plus users. So my role was as a BI evangelist, role was to be able to onboard customers like HR, finance. These are the internal customers, right? So from Microsoft IT, we delivered self-service BI, and we started with 300 plus users and literally grew that over time to 40,000 plus users. So today, I'm going to share some of those stories with you. But along with me, I have Casper. So Casper, please go ahead. You can introduce yourself.
So good morning. My name is Casper de Jonge, and I'm a Senior Program Manager on the Analysis Services team. I've been working about 5 years in the industry about building data warehouses, building cubes, and building reports as an IT professional, as a BI professional. And I've actually already worked for the last 4 years now on the SQL Server Analysis Services team, working on Power Pivot, Power BI, and Tableau models. You can probably find me at most of the conferences, TechEd, PAS Summit, SQL Saturdays, PAS BA is coming up, so feel free to drop by and see me there. I have a blog about Power Pivot, so also feel free to ask me any questions there on powerpivotblog.com. And also a recent author of a book on dashboarding and reporting with Power Pivot for Excel. So that's me, in short.
Absolutely, and I always make sure I attend all Casper's sessions at all these conferences, It's great. Okay, so what we're going to do today is we'll start with corporate BI. Now, why is this important? So all of us hear about Power BI, right? Self-service BI. So the main question that IT professionals have is, what is IT's role, right, Casper? What is IT's role into all this? If we are going to really do the self-service BI, we're going to give it all to the power users, business people, then what can IT do to really help business people to make better decisions faster? So that's why this corporate BI overview, we'll talk a little bit about this. Then we'll switch topics and talk about SAP BI interoperability. So we have released a new add-in inside of Excel, it's called SAP BI Connector, with the Power Query. That if you may have heard about Power Query, there's a new add-in of new connectivity that we have as a data source of SAP inside of Power Query. We're going to talk about that. And then we're going to shift gears, and I have invited from Microsoft IT, Kirkland Barrett, and he's going to talk about what are some of the experiences that they have today in terms of delivering self-service BI using Power BI. So let's get started. So just to set right expectations, our target audience is technical decision makers, but also business decision makers will benefit from it. Looking at how is Microsoft, what is the overall vision in terms of self-service BI and corporate BI, and also essentially how can they use SAP interoperability tools. So of course, our suggested prerequisites is that you are familiar with Microsoft BI and SQL Server. So let's get started with our first module, Microsoft Corporate BI Overview. So Casper, please go ahead.
All right, thank you, Sanjay. So today we're going to talk about a few things. We're going to talk about the evolution of BI. We're going to look at what are some powerful BI tools for everyone. And then we're going to shift gear a little bit and see how we can change from, instead of where the IT organization can change from simply building the cubes and data warehouses as they've done in the past, to empowering the business users to be able to create their own decisions, create their own insights, but as well as to see how we can control a balance between the two. How do we make sure that this particular dashboard that someone created, or this workbook that someone created, is now not being used by the entire organization to do their entire sales inventory on? So that's probably something you don't want as an IT organization. You want to make sure that the dashboard that's being used for the CFO is actually correct and the right numbers are being presented. And you get the right data from the right data sources, the data is curated. All of those things are still very important. but we have to break our traditional chain of how do we get data to the people, to the business users. So we're going to look at how we move from a personal BI inside Excel to a corporate BI where we have the BI semantic model from the analysis services team inside SQL Server to cover all the bases. Then we're going to look at some of the differences between what is corporate BI and what are some of the advantages what you get over having something inside the corporate BI environment to over what it is in Excel. And the last thing we're going to do is show you in a demo how you can go from end to end, starting in Excel, in Power Pivot, Power View, and move that over to a corporate BI advantages and how you can go about doing those things. And what are some of the benefits of doing that? So the first thing that we want to look at is, okay, how do we get here? What is the evolution of BI? And one of the big differences and the things that we see in the world is the trends are changing. The times are changing. We have a 10 times increase of data every 5 years. 85% of them are new data types. And in short, we have a data explosion. So there's a lot of data that is going around. But at the same thing, we have the consumerization of IT. So we have more connected device per person. We have more social media usage. So people are getting much more familiar with devices. The device get much more powerful. Everyone knows to bring your own device, the Internet of Things, all those hype words. Well, it affects not just the phone market or the tablet market, it affects the BI market as well. People know more about computers. They live and breathe computers. So they want to be able to be empowered. They want to do things themselves. And if they don't get it from whoever needs to supply to them, they just go off and do it themselves. So we have to make sure that we control that a bit. And one interesting research by Gartner shows that in 2015, organizations who can actually go ahead and use this new data explosion and consumerization IT to their advantage to create a coherent information management infrastructure will outperform the industry peers financially by 20%. And that's a pretty big number. So if you can...
That means profitability, right?
That means profitability, exactly. So if you can get ahead of those trends and make sure you can marry the two, you're into a bright future according to Gartner.
Absolutely.
So one of the next things that we want to look at is, okay, how do we get here? What's the evolution of BI? The most interesting thing that we have here seeing is IT has been busy keeping up with the growing demand for BI, right? I mean, we all know this. There's the end users that ask for reports and dashboards and numbers that they want to see, and IT is busy off building those things. So what they do is they harvest existing data, they cleanse it, they stage it, they gather it from line of business applications into data marts and all these different files, and they find the right information that is needed. Then they load that into ETL, data quality machines, and load that data into data warehouses and load them into cubes. This is a real project, a big, heavyweight, expensive project that the IT team has to do. And the problem is, today, they have to do this for everything, right? To provision reports, dashboards, and scorecards to meet end-user demands, they have to build those analytics, those reports, reporting services, performance point, Excel spreadsheets, all those things they're using to do analysis and giving that to the end user. But as you can see, it's a lot of steps. And if you want to make any change to the one on top, so you want to create a change to the report and you don't have the data, you have to go all the way back and see, okay, where do I get this data from? How do I get it into the staging environment? And how do I build a cube out of it, set up schedules to refresh it? So it will take some time to actually be able to get that information into the hands of the business user. They don't want to wait. So because business is outpacing IT and users demand agility. I mean, events happen in the world all day long, right? And one of the most interesting things is they don't want to wait to get this information. If it takes weeks to get these new numbers, or hey, this company that we're working, our competitor is doing all these interesting things in the market, what effect does it have on the market? How do I get to this data, and how do I get to incorporate that into my business models? So they ask IT. IT will say, yeah, sure, we'll get to you in like a few weeks. But they can't wait because the CFO just came in their office and asked them, can you give me these numbers right now? So they go off and do it by themselves. They use the favorite BI tool of everyone, Excel, and just get the information and get the numbers. But the numbers are found through all these different methods and different ways. You don't know really where it comes from and if it's the correct information, it's the most up-to-date information. So there are some interesting some questions there. And what you see here is this is rapidly breaking down the barriers of control with self-service BI. So the end users will get the information directly from the data sources by doing things themselves. So the most interesting question that we can ask ourselves is it possible to control balance with agility? And I think one of the demos that I'm going to do today is actually show you how this works in the traditional sense of the world when you actually have created your workbooks and how do we get to that. But another interesting thing that has come up pretty recently, I don't know, there was a few weeks ago, there was a Power BI session done by Danny Wayne, which shows you what the capabilities of Power BI are. And one of the big things in there is also that you can share queries and you can share information. So instead of IT building everything up from scratch into data warehouses, into cubes, into reports, what they also can do now is share information with their business users for them to easy use. So you give end users the right information directly into Excel and directly into the tools that they love and in order for them to be able to get the information themselves.
Can I just interrupt, Casper? So I'm going to, in fact, before we even go to the next slide, I'm going to say with confidence to all of you, audience here, yes, it is possible to really have this kind of self-service BI, having this control from IT, still enabling self-service BI, because we did it. Within Microsoft, as I was saying, Casper, we started with 300 users. We basically, we could have waited. We were building enterprise data warehouse. Right? We could have waited 2 or 3 years before we give control of the data to the end users. We actually started with the reports. We enabled business people because business people were creating reports anyways using their favorite tools. So all we did is we created one enterprise report catalog. We enabled them. We taught business users to be able to create reports on their own, essentially. And then we simply put all these servers in our farm, SharePoint, Performance Point, all this good stuff. And once we trained them to create reports themselves, still having that security manageability, the magic started to happen. From 300, we became 40,000 users. From one application, we rose to 100 plus applications in production, 5+ years. And of course, we're going to share later on during this MBA after 2 hours or so. We'll share with you what's happening today. But I'm just letting you know. And what my question to you is, does Microsoft provide tools for all of this that we are looking at?
So I think that's an interesting question. So one of the things that we can see here is, as we see a lot in the traditional world, there's a lot of different companies who do the same. There's the corporate BI side of things, where we have the big vendors next to Microsoft, like Oracle, IBM, SAP, who provide the corporate BI world. And then there's the self-service BI, where there's lots of interesting startups who provide information to end users. But the only one who actually provides the complete end-to-end scenario is Microsoft. From the one hand, we have the traditional BI that we've been working on for years and years and years. And on the other hand, we have the best self-service BI tool in the world, Excel.
Exactly.
More than 1 billion users.
Yep.
So it's our biggest challenge as Microsoft, and how do we get to empower those Excel users to be able to get from that? How do we close the loop? How do we make sure that IT can empower the business users in Excel to do all the things that they need? And how do we make sure IT keeps in control? So that's one of the most interesting challenges that we have inside Microsoft. And Microsoft is the only company in that can actually make sure that we close the loop between the two end users and the corporate BI users. And as I said earlier, one of the things that we have here is we have 15 years of innovation. It started like 15 years ago with OLAP services and SQL Server 7.0.
I still remember those days. I installed OLAP 7.0 the first time it came out. It was an exciting time.
Yes, it definitely was. A little bit before my time that I started working in the BI space, but it was definitely, and everything that we've learned there and everything that we've done there is still being used today in all our products.
Absolutely.
I mean, I believe there are still pieces of the code from OLAP Server all the way into Power Pivot today.
And MDX is still there too.
And MDX is still there too. Yeah, it's an industry standard now and is being created and set up right here at Microsoft.
Yeah.
So as you can see, there's lots of experience. We started out with OLAP. And you can see a little bit the trend is going into the more self-service world. So we first started with just pure OLAP services that connected to Excel. Then we started building some reporting services in SQL Server 2000. Then we started giving some control to business users with Report Builder and Model Designer in SQL Server 2005. In SQL Server 2007 and SQL Server 2008, we started giving some more power to users, like the data mining add-in.
Yes.
It's really powerful, and it's still really powerful today.
It really is.
There's so much things you can do right in Excel. And again, this is already where it got a little bit started, because there's an add-in in Excel where business users can do their own data mining solutions. But there's also a whole corporate BI side of things inside Visual Studio as part of SAP BI, where you can build your complete data mining solutions. The other thing that was introduced around that time in Office 2007 was scorecarding. In Office 2010, SQL Server 2008 R2 was what the big release was. What's the real magic happens when we started integrating Power Pivot into Excel. That was the first release that we did that. And also we did a SharePoint integration. So you can see a little bit, and I'll have some slides later about that as well, is where we can actually talk about, this is where the whole self-service cycle got started by introducing Excel and SharePoint, where you can share your workbooks into SharePoint. And of course, one of the other major corporate BI tools, Master Data Services. So that was SQL Server 2000 R2. SQL Server 2012, we brought forward more self-service BI capabilities in Power View. We introduced native Excel integration. So when you install Microsoft Office 2013 Pro Plus, you automatically get Power Pivot, and you automatically get our analysis service engine right there in Excel. So you see, we're moving down this path of enabling every Excel user to work with these large sets of data.
And I do want to say this, emphasize this point. If you have Excel 2013, please use Power Pivot and Power View. It's right there in that Excel. And you'll see amazing results in terms of self-service BI just as a starting point.
So, and then the one thing that I also want to mention in SQL Server 2012, one of the big things that we started introducing there is the tabular model. And that's where the corporate side of things comes into play. So it's like Power Pivot on steroids, and we'll see much more about that later on. And of course, SQL Server 2014 and Office 365, where we now have Power BI with all the amazing tools, Power Query, Power Map. We have a mobile experience, Hadoop integration, HD Insight. So we just continue on evolving the whole BI stack.
So one question, Casper, people ask me all the time is like, okay, what about, so we always had this multi-dimensional OLAP for so many years, and now we're talking about tabular. So if somebody is taking a decision today, which one to go for, what's your recommendation, tabular?
Well, I think one of the most interesting questions, that's one of the most interesting questions you can ask, because it's not a straightforward answer. But the most interesting thing is, what I usually would say, and it doesn't matter. I started out in that way when Power Pivot just came aboard. Is Power Pivot is an amazing proof of concept tool. So it's not just for the business users who want to do their own self-service BI, but it's amazing for the BI pro, the IT professional, to have Power Pivot sitting right there on their machines, sitting next to the business user, and just prototyping. Building proof of concept of the big corporate models that you're going to build.
Absolutely.
So one of the things you can do there is, after that, you've made a decision. There are some things after you've made that proof of concept, you can decide, okay, how am I going to show these numbers to my end users? What do I need to do? And really look hard. And I think there are some white papers out there that actually talk about what do you choose between multidimensional and tabular.
Yeah.
The big difference between the two is that tabular is much simpler.
Yes.
It's much easier to get started. It's much easier to do. But there are some features in multidimensional. As you see, there's 15 years of innovation. So there are some features in multidimensional that are not yet in tabular.
Absolutely.
Like custom rollups and custom aggregations,
yes.
Scope assignments, some really interesting calculated members. So there are some really interesting things inside multidimensional that are not yet available inside tabular model.
But I think still it's a good idea to start in Excel with business users and then evolve it into a BI semantic model. Would that?
Yes, yeah, and
Okay.
and it's either when you have it when you decide you want to go tabular, it's a really easy start.
Yeah.
If you want to do multidimensional, you probably have to rethink your architecture a bit anyway.
Awesome.
So
Thank you.
So one of the things that I want to bring up as well is that the analysis service momentum is awesome. I mean, there's a really broad adoption. It's the highest adoption compared to any other vendors. Excel is not only the most widely deployed BI tool, but it's also the most BI capabilities for reporting and dashboarding and visual designs. This is based on the Gartner 2013. Also, Microsoft is cited as the lowest total cost of ownership. The license cost as the number one reason for selecting Microsoft BI. And again, because we are Microsoft, there are so many things that we can leverage from just being Microsoft. Just by the simple fact of saying, hey, I can build my models right here in Visual Studio. I mean, who else can do that, right? So it's its BI platform is rated among the highest compared to any other vendors. Who can share their manageability experience with a tool like SQL Server, the box SQL Server? It's pretty amazing to see that we as Microsoft can share all those components with each other, and thus creating the highest rated BI platform infrastructure.
Absolutely.
So now we want to go a little bit over to the BI tools for everyone. So the Microsoft BI stack consists of a few different pieces. We have self-service BI for business analysts. It empowers users with self-service BI in Microsoft Office. This is the Power BI. This is Power Query, Power View, Power Pivot, Power Map, all those amazing tools right there in Excel. Then we have the advanced analytics for data scientists, where you can use data mining and things like that to really uncover deep insights and predict forward. And the last thing, then, that's what we want to focus on today, is to scale and manage data across the enterprise with corporate BI. So for the corporate BI side of things, it's really interesting to understand that how do we get from, and what are the differences between the Power Pivot workbooks right here in Excel and the corporate BI advantages. And there's more than it just being Excel on steroids.
Yes.
It's really interesting to think about the fact that when you're building, and the mindset is completely different as well. When you're building an Excel workbook right here in on your computer, you have probably your manager coming in, your CFO stands right next to your office and says, "Give me this number," and you go ahead and do it, and that right there in Excel. But the solution that you're building is really different because you're really focusing on this one single number. As a BI professional, you really have to think about the world a little bit different, because you're going to go talk to a lot of business users, not just one, but the entire organization. And you're going to have to make sure that this one single business calculation, this measure, works in all these different scenarios. So it's a really different mindset and a really different thing to work on.
And also, how do you share all this with thousands of end users, right? Across
So not just how do you share it, but also this calculation work in when you put it against regions, when you put it against fiscal years, 445 calendars, all those interesting questions that people can have. You have to make sure you've tested all of that, and you have to make sure that in all cases it's going to give you the right numbers and the right examples. So it really more thought needs to be put into it, and that's why it's so expensive, and that's why it's kind of like a project.
Exactly.
So let's spend a few minutes on the BI semantic model before we go into demos, where we're actually going to show you all the steps of going from the Excel workbooks to the corporate BI side of things. We have a seamless transition of the BI semantic model across the BI spectrum. We have personal BI at one hand, we have team BI, and we have corporate BI. And the personal BI is empowered users. The corporate BI side of things is aligned users. And the way we fill this in is empowered users it's my context, right? I need to find a solution. I need to create a workbook or something. But BI solution is created by a user. The context is for the single user, and it exists as a single document on my machine or on OneDrive or on Office 365. but it's probably just for me.
It's your Excel file.
It's my Excel files, and that's Power Pivot for Excel. So I'm empowering people. But maybe some of these things I actually need to share with my finance teams. We have a small project that's going on for this current month, and I want to be able to share this information to the other users in my organization. So one of the things that I want to do is share it. And when I share it, it goes to SharePoint or Office 365 in these days with Power BI. So we have our context. It's a BI solution created by a Power user. The context is for a small team, and it's managed on a server, either a Power Pivot for SharePoint server or a Power BI Office 365.
So you mean on-premise SharePoint or in the cloud?
Exactly. Okay. On-premise SharePoint or in the cloud.
Okay.
So the last step of this is we have to make sure that this team BI, and this is kind of where the control piece comes into play as well. How do we make sure that this team BI is now not all of a sudden this workbook that someone has created under his desk with some data that no one really knows about and shares it to people? Now it has the chance it grows into something amazing. Yeah. Because, of course, the people who built this workbook know all about the data. They know exactly what they want to do. So how do we make sure that this workbook doesn't end up in the hands of everyone? So how do we make this aligned? And that's where the corporate BI side of things comes into play. And again, this kind of goes back to what I talked about earlier. There's my context, our context, and the organization's context. Mm-hmm. Now the IT department comes in. It's the BI solution created by IT. It's established corporate context. It's reusable. It's using master data services. It's using ETL to cleanse data. It's tested. It's reusable. It's scaled. It's backed up. It's always fast and performant. Those are some of the things that the corporate BI people have to do to make it aligned.
Yeah, and to add some context to this, so for example, Microsoft IT, we had this 30 terabyte plus data warehouse, right? So how do you, obviously you're enabling people to use Excel, they can create their own good stuff, but then how do you really make sure the data that they're using is really the right data set? That's where what you're trying to say is like if you can really align the reports that they're creating, everything with the right KPIs, the right data sets.
Yes, exactly. So, and with that, I would like to go, and I want to see, okay, so what are some of the tools that we have available for our IT professionals? We have a dashboard creating tool in SharePoint with Performance Point, reporting, pixel perfect operational reporting for reporting services. Of course, analysis service, and of course, as I'm on the analysis services team, this is my favorite piece. Yes. A single semantic model and scalable analytics engine with analysis services. Master data, accurate and trustworthy data with master data services. And again, this is also a part where the empowering comes into play, because in the past, and I've seen many times that it is actually happening, is the people who actually really know what a product is. Let's say I'm a sales organization, I sell products. The people who actually really know what a product is the business users.
Absolutely.
So with master data services, we also have an add-in in Excel that allows business users to master the product table that everyone else in the organization is now using. So the single version of the truth is maintained by a business user, not IT. IT just makes sure, facilitates that a business user can do this.
So you're trying to say is if some hierarchy of product changes, then business can really use Excel and they can make the change right there.
Exactly. They can make the change right there in Excel, and it actually streams back into the corporate BI world. Okay. Data quality services, integration services, again, one of the big pieces in our corporate BI world, where you do the ETL to get the right data into the data warehousing. So what about this BI semantic model? And we were talking about this a little bit earlier. One of the big things, one of the big changes that we've seen across Microsoft is this one Microsoft strategy. Everyone needs to be the same. We want to make sure we have everything consolidated. In the past, Microsoft was really good at everyone building their own models. We had Performance Point, who kind of had their own model. We had reporting services who had their own model. Yeah. And of course, analysis service. And we've said, okay, no more. We want to make sure there's one BI semantic model, one semantic model for BI. Great. And that is the BI semantic model that lives in the analysis services. So it's one model for reporting, analytics, scorecarding, dashboarding. It's for all users, and you've seen that, right?
Yeah.
When you have Excel, you don't even know it, but you actually have a semantic model under the covers. When you do Team BI and you share it to SharePoint, you actually have a semantic model. Organizational BI, you're creating a semantic model inside the tabular model. So it's one model for client tools. There are two ways to build it. You have the tabular and you have the multidimensional. So for example, you can connect to Excel to both a tabular model and a multidimensional model. It's pretty amazing to see that even the newest tabular model that we shipped in SQL Server 2014 can still be connected to from Excel 7.0. I mean, we've made sure that it still talks MDX. We've made sure that it's still one semantic model. And one of the big feature items that we shipped in SQL Server 2014 is the capability of multidimensional models to talk DAX. What the implications of that are is that you can now use PowerView against multidimensional models. So a multidimensional model that you've been building for the last 10 years can now use the latest data visualization tool without any changes.
I see. So can you just clarify for me the data model? When you open Excel 2013, there is something called data model versus the Power Pivot model. Can you please clarify what's the latest on that?
So there's no difference.
Okay.
So in Excel 2013, we now have the Excel data model, and that is the data model where all the data lives inside Excel. In the past, SQL Server 2010, where we shipped Power Pivot as a first add-in into Excel, we shipped, and you could download it from and install it into Excel 2010. You would get the add-in and our engine together in Excel. That was so. Then we had a Power Pivot model.
Yeah.
In Excel 2013, we really integrated the data model, and now the Power Pivot add-in only is a UI on top of the model that now lives inside Excel.
And all they have to do is go to options in Excel and enable Power Pivot, Power View, and that's
yes.
pretty
But
much
you can even the most interesting thing is you can work with the data model and you didn't even know it. When you import tables inside Excel,
yeah,
it just goes into the data model. Now you can do Power Map on top of it.
That's
so
awesome.
The Power Pivot add-in is more for, okay, I really want to go start doing some really interesting advanced features, and I want to do relationships. I want to start creating KPIs, all those things. Okay. But you don't have to.
Awesome.
So for Analysis Service in SQL Server 2014, we have Power Pivot as a server, tabular model server. We have a Visual Studio tool set for BI professionals, and SQL Server Management Studio for IT professionals. So this is more the corporate side of things. And again, in Office 2013, we have the BI semantic model integrated in Excel 2013, but we also have the BI semantic model integrated in Office 2013 SharePoint and Office 365. So when you upload your workbook to Office 365 and you have a Power BI license, the BI semantic model is there. So you don't have to think about it, you don't have to install anything, it just works.
I see. So Power BI already has that SharePoint, all the components installed over there for you.
Yes.
Same BI semantic model with
the
seamlessly
same
go
BI
to
semantic
the
model
cloud.
you can use all over the place and it will just work.
Awesome.
So what are some of the corporate BI advantages that we can have? And this is the slide going into the demo that we're going to do pretty soon. What are some of the advantages that we have? The biggest difference is the scalability aspect, because usually the users on the desktop inside Excel, they don't have a lot of data that they want to talk about. But on big corporate models where you have a 40 terabyte or a 20 terabyte data warehouse, you don't want to, or let's say you load in 20 gigabytes of data into such a tabular model. It gets compressed down by our server, our engine, so it gets significantly less in memory, but you don't want to load in all the data all the time.
Yes.
So one of the features that you have as a professional is you can set up partitions. So you can say, hey, when you load in the latest data, only load in the current year. All the other years are not going to change anyway, so I'm not going to load them in. So you have a special mechanism to change how you want to load in data. And then there's direct query. So let's say you have an interesting thing. Let's say you have a PDW appliance.
Absolutely.
Or APS. Then you can have a direct query. You can build a tabular model on top of that.
Yes.
And directly, so you can have all the strengths that the analysis service has. For example, when you connect to Excel to a BI semantic model, you don't have to worry about how do I write this inner join and those kinds of things. The analysis service engine will take care of that, but it will push down under the covers to the APS appliances, and they will take care of it over there.
Absolutely, Casper. I just want to mention to the audience, yesterday we did another Microsoft Virtual Academy session on analytics platform system, which was PW, and there I showed a live demo of connecting from BI semantic model to an APS with billions of rows of data. So you don't have to really process the whole partition into analysis services. You can simply send the query directly to APS and have billions of rows of data behind the scenes.
All right. So a few of the other features that we have inside the BI semantic model is manageability. So you can really, in Excel, you can have VBA, inside Excel where you can do some things, but on the server you have all access. So you can use SQL Server Management Studio to script out things. You can use AMO, our object level, so you can write C# applications that do things with your tabular model. You can add fields, you can refresh all those things. We have PowerShell command lists that you can use. SSIS, so let's say you load in new data with SSIS, you can at the end of your SSIS package say, hey, now we've loaded in new data in the data warehouse, also refresh my tabular model or my multidimensional model for that side. It doesn't really matter. One of the other big differences is row-level security. So you can set up security that only some parts of the model can be shown to some users. And I'll demo that in a second. And of course, we have development tools. So we have integrated source control, team building, the deployment wizard. Source control also works with TFS, but also TFS Online works. And again, because we use this infrastructure that Microsoft provides, Visual Studio, it just works.
Absolutely.
So you can use your regular TFS, TFS Online. You can even use GitHub and those kinds of things to check in your tabular models.
Okay.
Okay, and with that, I really want to move
something
over.
in action.
Yeah, I really want to move over to the Corporate BI demo. So let's switch over here. So I'm switching over right now to my SharePoint environment. And what I have here, and imagine myself, I'm an IT guy, and I work in IT in the BI team. And what we have here is the site that my business users have. It's Contoso Finance site. So my business users have created all these workbooks. They're using it. They're happy. But now one of the things that my job is, okay, I need to make sure that we stay in control. We need to make sure that whatever happens here is being controlled. So one of the things that we have inside SharePoint is the Power Pivot Management Dashboard. So I can switch over here, go to the Power Pivot Management Dashboard, and the Power Pivot Management Dashboard shows us what's going on. And there's some of the things like infrastructure, server health. That's not really interesting. The most interesting thing is this chart on the bottom that you see here. This is the workbook activity chart with two axes. One is the number of queries, and the other one is the number of users. So when I run this thing with the play axe, you can actually see something interesting. You can see
I see moving bubbles.
workbook using.
Those are interesting.
The moving bubbles mean workbooks are being used.
Okay.
So when every bubble is a workbook,
Yeah.
and when a bubble goes to the top right, it means it's being used by a lot of users and a lot of queries are being sent.
So that way you can focus on those ones.
Well, actually, one of the things that we want to make sure of, and you can kind of see it here, is you see things move in and out, right?
Yeah.
That's exactly what we expect, because self-service BI, workbooks, and SharePoint Team BI are probably short-lived projects.
Yes.
They're not happening all the time.
Absolutely.
So they will move in and out, and you can see that here. So we don't have to focus on it. But if there are workbooks that are focusing and they're staying around on the top-hand right,
Yes.
that's something that the IT team needs to take action on, and we need to move that over. So in our case, we have one. We have a workbook that is being used a lot. So I want to bring that over into my corporate BI environment.
So this one, the bubble you're showing right
Yeah,
now.
so the bubble that I'm
I
showing
see.
here, I want to take over. And there's lots of other interesting things you can do here.
Okay.
You can go into a workbook activity chart, so you can see what data sources are being used by a lot and who's using them. I won't go into too much details here, but so now we have a workbook that we want to bring over to the corporate IT side of things.
Okay, cool.
So what I can do is I have my SQL Server Management Studio up here, and I've connected to my tabular model, and I already have a few databases running here. I want to add a new database. And I want to add this new database from an Excel workbook.
Okay. That business power user created.
So the business power user created that workbook, and I want to bring it over to the IT side of things, just to get people started, because people are asking, we want more years of data.
Yes.
We want to have more data into. So how can I easily do this? Well, what I can do here is I can go in here, go to select Restore from Power Pivot, and click on Restore from Power Pivot, and it asks me, where do you want to restore it from? So in my case, I'm going to go to Browse. I'm going to go to my, let me switch quickly over to my cheat sheet and copy it here. So I have this Excel file, and you can see here, it's just a regular Excel file. I'm pointing to an XLSX file, and I'm going to call it dashboard. Press OK. It's executing. I can refresh my SQL Server Management Studio here, and now I have a new database called dashboard.
Yes.
And it's now running on a server. And one of the things that I can do is I can immediately go in, go to my Excel and connect to it.
Yeah.
So I can go to data, from other sources, select analysis services, connect to my server, local host, connect to my dashboard, finish, and I want to create a pivot chart or power view, pivot table.
Yeah.
In this case, I'm going to create a simple pivot table.
Yeah, and take
and
your
here you
time.
can see the same model. So what I can do here is my calendar year. So now let's add some data. So let me go back to my Visual Studio, and let's go ahead and take a look what you can do here. There's a lot of things you can do here. You can change the connection strings that you want to do if you want to connect to a different thing. But the other thing is you can see all the tables here. And one of the things I can do is add partitions. So I'm going to add a simple partition. Sorry. Go to
So basically, you just converted an Excel file or Excel PowerPoint model
Yes.
into a cube at a high
I've
level.
created it. Yes, exactly.
Okay.
So now I'm going to copy this partition. I'm going to say I want to add more data. So I'm going to change the query that I have here to load in more data. I'm going to press OK. Now we can see we have this single table consists of multiple different partitions.
Yes.
This one has 32,000 rows, and we're going to process this one to add more data. I'm going to press OK.
And I remember the times when we used to create partitions for performance reasons. Is
Yes.
that still the case?
It's
or-
not the case for performance reasons.
Okay.
It's only the reason that we have it now is for data management.
Okay.
So press OK. If I now go back to my Excel spreadsheet and do refresh, more data is being added. I didn't have to do anything here. It's just on the back end, things happened.
That's awesome.
Some of the things that we can do here as well is we can do things like scripting, so we can process tables. We can script it out. I can use this script to process data against. I can do things like send queries, either from here. So I have this DAX query here that I can execute and run against my server.
So what are you doing here?
So in this case, I'm just querying against the model that we just created.
I see.
And the query I can do here and right here in SSMS, but I can write an application that actually queries directly against my Tableau
This
model.
is a DAX query.
This is a DAX query, yes.
Of using just, the
Yeah, you
Explorer.
can do both. You can use MDX or you can use DAX, but this is a DAX query where I'm getting the month number of years
Absolutely.
by products and the sales.
You're trying to say that front-end tools can use,
Yeah, front-end tools can do this, but also you can develop against it.
I
So
see.
there's lots of different things you can
applications can
do.
use.
Yeah, applications, Power View, all of those things.
Okay.
One of the other things you can do here is add roles.
Yes.
You can go in, add a role, read access. I can give it a name. I can add members to it. In this case, I'm going to add a member to my role, and I'm going to show you in a second what that actually means. So I'm adding someone called demo user, and I can create row filters. So I can say, you can only see part of the model, not everything. So let me go to my cheat sheet again and copy this expression real quick.
So somebody can only see Europe data in this case.
So in this case, he can only see Europe data.
Yeah.
So I'm going to press OK. Now we've added this role, and I can show you actually what that is. So let me quickly go in here, and I'm running my Excel as a special user. I'm going to run it as my Excel demo user.
Yes.
You can see it on top. It's called demo user.
Okay.
So now I'm going to go data, from other sources, analysis services. I can connect it to the same model, but now I'm someone else. Now I'm this guy, this demo user. So if I now put in regions, let's go down to my sales territory region. You can only see Europe.
Oh, I wanted to see Brazil though.
Well, you can't.
Okay, fine. So I don't have permission. I'm like,
You don't have permission, so you can
security
only
is
see
working.
part of the model.
if it was only in Excel, then could we have done all this?
So inside Power Pivot, this is not possible.
Exactly.
So you really have a managed environment on the IT side of things.
Okay, great.
And there's lots of interesting things you can do with role management. So there's lots of different things you can do here. So you can see once you move the Excel workbook, I didn't do anything. I didn't model anything new here.
Yeah.
I just added some additional capabilities as an IT pro user would do right here inside SMS. I didn't change the model at all.
Right.
So I just went up, extracted the model from Excel. I've added some partitions to load more data in. I've created security. I didn't do anything else. I didn't change the tables. I didn't create any measures. Nothing was needed.
That's awesome.
But that's probably just the intermediate step. Now you really want to go into this corporate BI world where you want to make sure is all these measures, all these calculations, all this data now needs to be represented to a whole bunch of users.
Yes.
So what we can do is we can also do the same trick that we just did, extracting this Power Pivot workbook into SQL Server Management Studio. We can do the same thing in Visual Studio.
I see.
So let's open up Visual Studio
Yeah, let's see that.
right here. And I've installed SDT BI. It's a web downloadable project. You can do new project. And when you do that, you get business intelligence added to Visual Studio.
Okay.
In this case, you'll see analysis services. And there's lots of things you can choose. You can do multidimensional, you can do tabular projects, or you can choose import from Power Pivot. And that's what I'm going to do now. I'm going to press OK. It's going to choose which server I want to do. Press OK, I don't necessarily care. And press the workbook, and that will actually load the data into my project and start a project. I'm going to skip this for a second because I already did this on the back end.
So last time you simply imported into SQL Server Management Studio.
Yes.
And with minimal changes.
With
but
minimal
this time
changes.
you want to do more, and that's
So-
why using Visual Studio.
So now I can do things in Visual Studio because I want to add more things to the model. I want to take a look at what they're really doing. Are they really using the right data sets?
I see.
Are the measures the right measures that they're using? And also a lot of the things that we can do inside Excel and inside is set up special reporting properties that allow us to make the use of Power View under the covers much more engaging, much more interesting.
Okay.
Especially for the unsuspecting user who doesn't use Power View day in, day out. Like the Excel user is really familiar with the data. But if you're building a corporate BI solution, your CFO, your CIO might start wanting to use Power View.
Yes.
And if you want to make sure, as an IT pro, as a BI pro, you can actually make sure that the models that you create are easier to use.
Yes.
So what you see here looks very, very familiar to Power Pivot.
Yeah.
Only now it's a different shell. You have it inside Visual Studio. And you can see the things on the right here that we have our model in a solution. I can go in and do check-in.
I see.
I can add to source control. What I can do here is I can select my columns, and we have a properties grid. We don't have this inside Power Pivot.
Exactly.
But this is a real thing that everyone knows and loves about Visual Studio, some of the capabilities here. But other than that, it's pretty much the same.
Can I see the diagram?
Yeah, we have the diagram view. It looks a little bit different because Visual Studio looks a little bit different.
Yes.
Like we have the same black and white theming that Visual Studio
It
has.
has blue color though.
Yeah, that's blue colors in here.
Cool.
So we can do all those things. There's things like partitioning in here, role management, all of those things. It's very, very, very similar. One of the interesting things that you can do now is you can also start deploying it. So you can say, I want to deploy my model. And this means I can deploy it to a staging environment and set it up there and do all those kinds of things.
And this is where you have the direct query option. Can you quickly
Yes,
show
it's a
us
direct
that?
query
That's-
option
That's
as well.
really
I
exciting.
can
as
go
well.
click on the model and I can turn the direct query mode on or off. And as soon as I do this, when I start deploying my model to my tabular instance, it's no longer using the 30-pack cache. It's now pushing data directly through to the underlying data source.
Okay.
And today, the data source that are supported is SQL Server and APS or PDW.
Absolutely.
So those sources are supported
Great.
when you turn that on. So let's see. So let's quickly go back to the slides and see what are the things that we're doing. The thing that we've seen here today is Power Pivot or the BI semantic model is really
Yes.
more than the Power BI that we've heard about and the Power Pivot that we've heard about. And we all loved Power Pivot and Power BI. It changed the world for everyone,
Yes.
not just for business users, but also for BI professionals and IT pros, because they can now do much more, much faster.
Yes.
Because the same power of Excel and the simplicity of tables and relationships has also been brought to the IT world inside Visual Studio. So you can just create tables and relationships. You don't no longer have to worry about dimensions, measure groups, attribute hierarchies, attribute relationships, all those MOLAP terminologies, which are amazing because you can do a lot of very interesting things with it, but it also complicates things a lot.
Yes. So I see a big role for IT in all this. I mean, essentially, with the whole self-service BI, IT can really take this to a new level and enable it for thousands of users with consistent data catalog, right?
Yes, exactly.
So
All right, thank you.
I want to really thank you for this time, and essentially, we have much more stuff coming. We are going to talk about SAP BI, and we are going to talk about SAP BI and other corporate BI stories with you. So please come back after 10 minutes.
All right, thank you. Thank you for watching. Thank you, Sanjay.
Thank you.